be some policy for education. So today what we do, we'll take a whole holistic view of education system. So how the education system was there in ancient India, then how it was in medieval education system, how it came in British era, how the system was improvised or deteriorated. Then we will see what are the goals and aims of education system, and then we will also see what are the policies that we had in past, and then what is there in this policy. So we'll take complete look how these policies have been drafted and when and how these things have happened. So these are the table of contents. They all will come as the slide moves on. So let us start with ancient education system. What you can do is whenever you have some query, you just put a message in chat box. So at the end, we will see all the queries and we'll try to address as much as possible. So initially, in ancient India, there was no formal education system. Everything was transferred through father to son. You know that all the skill sets like pottering, then smithing, jewelers, farming, agriculture, all these things were passed on from generation to generation. There was no written material, there was no kind of textbooks available or these kind of things. Only things were just passed on. So primarily related to his occupation, and also whatever knowledge base was there, that was only confined to that occupation only. Let's say something is there in jewelry, so in jewelry making there must be some knowledge base which was never known to the potters, and so the knowledge base available in potter was not available to smiths. So there was clear cut distinction based on occupation, and only knowledge gets transferred based on occupation. That was the scenario in very old olden days. Later on, just before 5-7 thousand years back, we could see some two systems of teaching, that is Vedic system and Buddhist system. So Vedic system was revolved around the Vedas, Vedangas and Upanishads, while the Buddhist system was revolving, or it was based on the Buddhist school, based on the Buddhist ideology. So language of education for Vedic system was Sanskrit, while for Buddhist system it was Pali. Now what was there in an ancient education system of India? So back then the education system was very different from the rest of the world. We had a kind of a ashram and gurukul sanskriti which was never been noticed or available in any part of the world at that time. So a child has to leave his home and go for a education to a gurukul for a few years, and it was free of cost. According to this system, physical labor was must. Even the child wants to pursue for psychology or philosophical knowledge, he would have to still go for some manual work, and teacher used to take care of the food, clothing, housing, everything. Debates and discussion were a part of education even in ancient India. In Vedic system of study, child generally start the learning at the age of 5, and to mark this commencement of learning, Vidya Arambha ceremony, which is including the worshipping of the goddess Saraswati, used to be performed. The only problem was Brahmins, Kshatriya and Vaishya, they are only allowed to take the education. Remaining castes were not allowed to take the education. In Vedic system, Rig Veda, Samveda, Yajurveda and Atharvaveda, they are the four main Vedas were taught. 6 Vedangas like rituals, metrics, exegesis, grammar, phonetics and astronomy were taught. And Upanishads and Tarka Shastra and Purans, they all were taught during the Vedic system. This is one picture depicting how students used to learn during Vedic system. Then let us see what is Buddhist system. Buddhist system was there by the birth of Buddha and 1000, 2000 years back that Buddha's incarnation on the earth. So in Buddhist system, A child generally started his studies at the age of 8. A ceremony called Prabhajja used to be performed, and in Buddhist system, all the castes were allowed to take education. There was no caste system as such in Buddhist system of study. They used to learn 3 pitkas like Vinaya, Abhidhamma, and Sutta. And all 18 Buddhism schools used to have these 3 pitkas. Certain other subjects which were common to both Vedic and Buddhist system were arithmetic, military science, law, performing arts, ethics, art and culture. So this is one picture depicting the Buddhist system of study or learning. Although this slide says that in olden days or ancient India, women were also receiving the education, but that was very few percentage or a small part. Generally, women were trained in housekeeping, dancing and music. Girls also had to conduct Upanayana ceremony, just like Upanayana sanskara for boys. Similar way, girls also used to have a Upanayana ceremony. And generally, they got 2 types of education. One is Sadhyo Vahas. This typical kind of students used to pursue education till the age they get married. And Brahmavadinis. These students never get married and they continue to study throughout their lives. So Vedas and Vedangas were taught to women, but up to the extent of religious songs and poems necessary for rituals. Some of the notable Vedic and Upanishad women scholars were Apala, Indrani, Gosha, Lopamudra, Gargi, Maitri, likewise. But again, they were very few. So this is one painting showing the education given to girl students by a Buddhist monk. At that time and even today also, the aim of education is quality of education, enrichment of culture, character, personality development and cultivation of noble ideas, to make the students future ready and survive in any situation, to gain mental, physical and intellectual personality, practical knowledge along with theoretical knowledge and overall development. So rather this was the aim at that time, and this is even most of the things are relevant today also. In ancient India, there were few institutes, few universities which are very famous across the globe, and the most famous was Takshashila University or Takshashila Vidyapith. So Takshashila was one of the famous center of learning, and it was based on Buddhism. So subjects like scriptures, law, medicine, sociology, astronomy, military science, and all other things were taught over there. Students like Panini, who was expert of grammar, or Chanakya, who was expert of statecraft, were also part of this university. Students from Kasi, Kosala, Magadha, and other countries were used to come to this university, because at that time even Magad was a different country and Takshashila was also a different country. Takshashila generally, where is the Takshashila actually? So right now it is in northwestern Pakistan, and it has been declared as a cultural and heritage site by UNESCO. The second famous university was Nalanda, and there also you have a subjects like Veda, fine arts, medicine, mathematics, astronomy, likewise. It is in Bihar at present. And other universities are Vallabhi University, Vikramshila University, Ujjain University, and Banaras University. Vallabhi University is in Gujarat only. It is on seashore. So there we used to learn law, medicine, economics, and Vikramshila was specifically famous for Tantric Buddhism. So this is one picture depicting the Nalanda University of Bihar. So what are the good points of ancient education? It was focusing on all-round development of the students. Emphasis was given on practical knowledge. Focus was on knowledge and not on ranks. Study environment was very pleasant as classroom were generally built in forest. No pressure was on student for studying, rather it was for effective learning. And king used to support the education. And government did not interference with the formation of curriculum. Means government was not telling what the curriculum should be, but they were only supporting, and they were generally an independent autonomy kind of a system. The disadvantage were like women were not allowed to get admission into Gurukul, and education to women was not much into practice. Also, not all the castes were allowed for education, and we had this famous example of Eklavya. Even Karna was denied education. So likewise, it was not available for all, not available for women. Then from Buddhist era to almost 8th century, this period was not history does not know, or we don't have much documentation about education system at that era, but we believe that the same Vedic and Buddhist system of education would have continued during that time. In medieval education era, we all know that after 8th century many invasions happened to India, and Muhammad Ghaznavi started invading India. So he set up large number of schools and library in India. So during that specific time, Arab and Turk brought some new culture, traditions and institutions in India. They were based on Islamic pattern of education, which was different from the Buddhist education system. The education system primarily focused during that era was Islamic and Mughal system, and main objective was to spread the knowledge and propagation of Islam. The purpose of this education system was to make people religious minded. Now, what were the study subjects of study during medieval system? So Arabic and Persian languages were generally taught, and those students who are learning Arabic and Persian were given higher posts in administration. Recitation of Quran was compulsory. Along with that, they used to learn manual skills, literature, medicine, geometry, trade, commerce, etc. There were two types of education system in medieval times. Either religious education, where they used to learn Quran, Muhammad and his inventions, Islamic laws and Islamic history. And in secular education, they used to learn Arabic language, grammar, history, philosophy, mathematics, geography, politics, economics, Greek language and agriculture. There were two types of schools. For primary education, the schools were known as maktabas, and for higher education like madrasas. So in school education, they used to learn Persian language, some stories, letter writings, accountancy. In madrasas, they have some higher level skills. During the era of Akbar, he also introduced some Hinduism and philosophy in madrasas. And along with medicine, history, geography, economics, and political science, Akbar also introduced the subjects like Vedanta and Patanjali compulsory for the Sanskrit students. So advantage of this medieval education was it was sort of a practical education. Student and teacher relations were good. Students were taught from the basics, and rulers used to support the development of education. The disadvantage was it was mostly religious and Islamic education, and focus was aimed on leadership for ruling the country. Now, after the British invaded India, Lord Macaulay introduced British system into Indian origin. In fact, we generally always get a WhatsApp forward which says that Lord Macaulay just traveled across India and he found that the roots of education, roots of culture is so strong over here. It is not possible to capture these generations, these people, unless and until we change the system, we change the education system over here. So they completely revamped the education system. The whole history was written as per their perspective, and English languages was introduced. So the main aim of that whole education system was to spread Christianity, to produce workforce for their administration, and hence during that 100 years, 1830 to let's say 1950, whatever 120 years we had as a English education system or British education system. So during that 120 years, probably 4 or 5 generations of India got passed through that education system. And so we see that even the results of those education system are still we have to bear, because the education system introduced at that time was specifically designed to produce workforce, not the entrepreneurs or not the skill base, but they just want to produce clerks, they just want to produce some laborers, they just want to produce someone who just follow the orders, right? So you may see that in those centuries, 18th centuries, 19th century, you have so many scientists produced across the globe. Even a small towns were producing scientists. But during 18th, 19th and 20th century, we have hardly finger countable Nobel laureates or finger countable researchers across the India. Why? Because for 4 or 5 generations, we have been trained in such a way that we are just there to mug up. We are just there to reproduce the mugged up things. So systematically, the whole cultural aspect, the whole base of India, that is its education, its Vedas, all the rituals, everything was vanished in the people's mind. And you know that once 4 or 5 generation does not know what was there in past, remaining generation like us will never know what was there in past. Right now, even though whatever we know is whatever available in literature, that is still available to us, but there must be some literatures which was burned off, which was destroyed, and which could never come to us, or which could never see the light of an independent India. So in those 120 years, we suspect that okay, there had been a drastic change, rewritten the history, and the matter was presented to us in such a way that we never know that what happened during those last 5,000 years. Something which is available like Vedas and all, it is good fortune that we are still having those things with us. But many things would have vanished that we never know. Now let us see what is the aim of present day modern education system. So the modern education system is really built to inculcate values such as quality, secularism, education, and environmental protection, etc. So we presume that every student should get a minimum level of education so as to understand the culture and people of our country, provide education to the people who cannot afford it, and prepare students for the increasing demand of the societies and industries. So at present, the curriculum or the whole syllabus of all the 12 standards or complete graduation is divided into 3 stages. We have a primary education, we have a secondary education, and we have a graduation. So generally, first to 10 standard is considered as a primary education, uh, and 11th and 12th is secondary education. Sometimes in some state, from 8th standard onwards, they say secondary education, and 11th and 12th is known as higher secondary. So it depends on the state. In similar way, in graduation, student used to go to college or university university via some entrance exam, and they get some education. From the institution's point of view, we have a schools which offer primary education, colleges which can offer primary or which can offer secondary education or graduation. You know, in Gujarat we call 11th and 12th as a school, but in Maharashtra, Karnataka and remaining states, 11th 12th is a college. So 11th and 12th standard is known as a junior college and then senior college. So it depends on the states how they call the things. And similar way, university. So university is generally offering the graduation programs. Either you can have a state level entrance exam, or either you can have a JEE entrance exam. And the graduation course can be of 3 years or 4 years. If it's a BA BCom course, it's a 3 years. If it's engineering, then it's a 4 years. Advantages of modern education is we are using a technology in the learning. Student is learning freelancing and many new technologies. Employment is increased and diversified multi programs are available to the students, and top class colleges and universities with good environment and infrastructure. So present day education system is so vast that every district, every state has good amount of colleges. When India got independent, there were hardly finger countable colleges. In terms of medical, engineering, arts, science, commerce, all type of institutes are very less. But we can see that in last 70 years, there is a huge leap in number of colleges. And nowadays, colleges are so many colleges are available, so that admissions to these colleges have become easier than the previous years. Disadvantage of modern education is, what is the disadvantage of present day education? That government interference in education is increased. Government is doing interference either in education, management or syllabus. Pressure is there on students. Practical knowledge is not there. Fees is very high. Schools and colleges fees for private institutions are very high. And lack of connectivity for the students who live in rural areas. You all must be living in Ahmedabad or Maninagar, so for you this college is very near, but someone who is living in Dahod or someone who is living in Dang, for them they have to come out of their district to get a good quality education. Now let us try to understand how the education has been shaped up in India. So initially when India got independent, our constitution was framed in 1950. So education becomes the responsibility of state and central government. Now up till now you must have understood that certain departments is a responsibility of central government and certain departments are responsibility of state government. Like say finance, foreign policy, then defense. All these departments are responsibility of central government. But sanitization, then you have Mehsul Vibhag. So all this is the responsibility of state. And even municipality has also a different responsibility. But education is the only department where center, state and municipality, all three try to contribute it. So you have a central university or central institute or central colleges. You may have a state government college or state government university, or you may also have a municipal college or municipal school or municipal university, because all these government try to contribute in education field. So constitution makers recognize this opportunity, and they decided that unless and until we have a good educated population, we can't have a better country. So constitution emphasis on the principle of equality of education for all and the achievement of social justice through policy of positive discrimination was emphasized. Education policy in independent India keep on changing time to time, but the first effort was done in 1948. A commission was appointed under the chairmanship of Dr. S. Radhakrishnan. Dr. S. Radhakrishnan was a second president of India, but before he became a president, he was a chairman of this first University Education Commission. So the first commission came was University Education Commission. So this commission was set up to identify, to give status to Indian University, suggest the improvements and extensions for future requirements. To create an effective and functional democracy and reduce socio-economic inequalities. University system has to be very free. So this commission gave guideline to make it effective and democratic functionality in the university system. Commission had aimed at creating universities which would provide knowledge, wisdom, and comprehensive development of the personality. To make higher education accessible, all sections of society, irrespective of region, caste, gender, and religion, they all were part of this system. So the first commission came up was University Education Commission. The second commission came was Secondary Education Commission. So under the chairmanship of Dr. A. Lakshmana Swamy Mudaliar in 1952, Secondary Education Commission was set up and its reports was tabled in 1953. So it suggested the diversification of high school courses and establishment of multi-purpose high schools. So this commission was concentrating on schools. So another proposal was to get introducing a uniform pattern throughout India. So they proposed some pattern of teaching throughout the India, and it proposed to develop technical schools. The recommendation of commission occupy a very significant place in the development of secondary education in India. But here again, there was one lacuna that promotion of women education was not provided in that commission. Then the government thought to introduce the first ever education policy in India. Up till now, whatever efforts were done, they were only commissions and there was no policy framework over there. So Mudaliar Commission was followed by the appointment of Indian Education Commission under the chairmanship of D.S. Kothari. So this commission is known as Kothari Commission. So Kothari Commission proposed the first National Education Policy, NEP, in 1968. We generally call it as a National Education Policy or National Policy of Education. Repeatedly, it can be changed either way, it can be called. So the first National Education Policy came in 1968. And the first paragraph of this policy says that India's destiny has to be shaped in classrooms only. So unless and until our classrooms are strong and knowledge given over there is strong enough, we can't formulate the destiny of India. So Kothari Commission had given a power to work, instrument of social and economic and political change. So these were the major resolutions in that policy. The conclusion that the Indian education needs a drastic reconstruction, almost a revolution, to realize the constitutional goals and to meet the various problems facing the country in different sectors. So this commission has three major aspects. One was internal transformation, second was qualitative improvement, and third was expansion of education facilities. Based on the recommendation by Kothari Commission, then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi recognized that this is a radical restructuring of the Indian education system, and national education policy was implemented in 1968 at that time. It covered elementary education and higher education all over the India for rural and urban areas. It also tried for a total reformation. It aimed extending the prospects of education to all the section of the society to accomplish the goal of harmony and integration. Key resolutions were they gave three language formula: English as a medium of instructions, national language is Hindi, and Sanskrit as an ancestral language. And also they provided local languages as well. Education was provided irrespective of caste, region, religion, or gender, physical or mental disability. Talent identification should be given importance. Better training and qualification to teachers. So teachers quality and qualification was first time talked in National Policy of Education. Part-time courses were also developed at university level. So this policy was largely criticized for three language formula, but yes, in spite of criticism, this is the first systematic effort to give the shape of Indian education system. Second policy came almost after 18 years to that in 1986, and special emphasis was given to equalize the educational opportunities. So during this era, Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, he formulated the commission under his own leadership, and main objective was to provide equal opportunities for scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, other backward class, women who were deprived of this opportunity. So in previous education commissions, government felt that still the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, or other backward classes and women are not getting enough opportunity. So in this policy, special mention, special care was taken for these specific classes. So the key resolutions of this policy was, first was Operation Blackboard. So Operation Blackboard says that the teacher and student has to go back to Blackboard and try to learn the things one to one or in classroom environment. Scholarships were expanded. Praud Shikshan, which you call as adult education, was promoted. Teachers from SC/ST communities were recruited. Poor families were given incentives like Madhyan Bhojan or something like that. Develop new institutions, and it also give importance for open universities. So Indira Gandhi National Open University was established during those era. So policy was also recognized as a rural university model because here rural education was given more emphasis. National curriculum framework was developed during that era, and 10 plus 2 plus 3 formula become applicable nationwide. If you remember, or your grandparents, if you ask, in your grandparents' time, 11th standard was the last standard. Nowadays, we have a 12th standard as a last standard of school education. But our grandparents have learned in such a way that 11th was called as a SSC and 7th standard was known as a metric, something like that. But those all things were gone, and now we are having 10 plus 2 plus 3 kind of a formula. During this policy only, they try to strengthen UGC, that is University Grant Commission, then NCERT, AICTE, they all were strengthened during this era. Now in 1992, there came an amendment, Sudharo, in National Education Policy 1986. So under the chairmanship of Acharya Ramamurthy, they developed and gave a new amendment to the previous policy. So under the leadership of N. Janardhan Reddy, Central Advisory Board of Education was set up, and modification in NP was done. So report was submitted in 1992. So 1992 and 1986, they are not a different policy, same policy, but came with some modification. Even in 2005, Some modification was done by Prime Minister Manmohan Singh under UPA government for the education policy of 1986. So key resolutions were you have a common entrance exam all over India. So AIEEE came at that time. So previously there were no common exam, but then now they proposed common exam for central institutes, at least for IITs and NITs. And varying admission standards in these programs were equalized. Also, physical, mental and financial burden of the students and their parents was reduced because there was multiplicity of entrance exam. Previously, let's say even before 1990 or 1980, student has to visit various institutes. They had to fill various forms for admission. But because of common exams, these efforts were reduced. Another aspects of that policy was computer literacy, value education, teacher training program, and vocational education. Now, before discussing the present policy, let us try to understand that what is the difference between Indian education system and foreign education system. We don't say that Indian education system is bad or good. We are just evaluating based on various subjects, based on various topics. We are trying to compare two education systems. First is option to switch. Let's say right now switching a major subject in middle of course is not possible in Indian education system. Let's say you have learned one full year for MCA, but second year you don't want to learn MCA, you want to learn biology. So it is not allowed in Indian education system, but in foreign education system it is allowed. So most of the universities in USA and Europe, they allow you to switch the subject in middle of courses and don't limit to one subject only. And is approach. So in Indian education system, generally past research is taught and it is generally based on theoretical education. So mostly whatever you're learning is already a past. And let's say as a MCA student, if you're learning some language, so you may not be learning a language which is upcoming in the market, but you must be learning something which is already there in 5-10 years back. In foreign education system, fresh research other than what already have been discovered is also been taught, and there is more practical approach to that. Research incentives in education system is minimal, although there is a help from government is there, but these funds are very limited and research incentives are also very less. Well, in case of a foreign education system, big companies like Google, Microsoft, they try to fund the research and hence better research incentives are available in foreign education system. Curriculum. So implementation of modification based in the latest approved research studies are quite late in curriculum of Indian universities. In Indian universities, whatever curriculum is made is generally subject name changes, some books are changes, but still drastic change of syllabus never happens, and they keep on teaching the olden things, and even something which is already available in the market, then they try to teach it. In case of foreign universities, syllabus modification is very frequent and they try to teach whatever is latest available. In terms of exposure, India generally does not able to invite or just attract foreign students. So very few institutes in India can have a foreign students, and even the foreign students are from third world country. In foreign, all across globe, people are attracted to study over there, and therefore student gets better exposure because they are an international university, international exposure. Course options. In India, option of courses are very limited. In international university, course options are very large. Here, job opportunities are limited to top educational institutes. Let's say if someone is doing engineering from Nirma or LD College of IIT or IIT, they have a better opportunity compared to they are doing from some for some very distant college. Let's say someone is doing from Dahod College, then there is a less opportunity from him because this college is very far and companies won't like to go there. In international university, they provide excellent job opportunity to students. Funding is in India, education is still affordable. Like let's say you are learning in government college, so you are just learning free of cost. Our government college's fee are hardly 1,000 rupees. So in India, education is still affordable. In foreign countries, cost of living, food, travel, etc. is added to overall education. Hence, foreign country education is costly in that sense. Return on investment. So depending upon the college, the return on investment of Indian university is conditional. Let's say you are opening some university in dense area with quality offerings of subject and degrees, your university will definitely get return on investment. But for an education system, return on investment is very high because their universities are also modeled based on fees of student, and depending on the research grants, depending on the collected fees, university generally make profits, right? So here return on investment for students is also conditional, and return on investment for a businessman or for an educational entrepreneur, for them also it is very conditional. In Indian system of education, scholarships are very limited. In foreign system, ample number of scholarships are available. And in fact, they have a work study program where they also get some money along with studying. So now let us start discussion on new education policy 2020. So current education system has been often criticized to be rigid, redundant, ફોકસિંગ મોર ઓન કન્ટેન્ટ્સ એન્ડ રિઝલ્ટ્સ. અત્યારની જે એજ્યુકેશન સિસ્ટમ છે એટલે કે આના પહેલાંની જે હતી એમાં પ્રોબ્લેમ શું હતા મેઇન કે ઇટ ઇઝ રિજિડ, ઇટ ઇઝ રિડન્ડન્ટ, ફોકસિંગ મોર ઓન કન્ટેન્ટ એન્ડ રિઝલ્ટ, એ બધા પર એ વધારે ધ્યાન રાખતી હતી. જ્યારે ઓલરાઉન્ડ ડેવલપમેન્ટ ઓફ સ્ટુડન્ટ વોઝ નોટ ગિવન મચ અટેન્શન. So let us see NEP 2020 હવે એ છે ને રિપ્લેસ કરશે પાછળની બધી જ પોલિસીઝને. તો in January 2015 a committee was formed under the former cabinet secretary TSR Subramaniam, and they started framing the new education policy. Committee gave their report in June 2017, and this report was made public in 2019 by a panel led by ISRO Chief Krishnaswamy Kasturirangan. So draft policy was tabled by MHRD over internet for public consultation, and for 1 year the general public of India keep on giving the consultation guidance to the government, and finally it was finalized the draft. So the new draft or new NEP aims to encourage the cognition and creativity, will lead to restructuring of entire system to be more learner centered, based on pillars of access, equality, quality, affordability, and accountability. Education policies across the world continue to change dynamically, while India has been following same education for 34 years. So thus leaving out the student here with less leverage as compared to the students globally. દુનિયાની એજ્યુકેશન પોલિસી વારંવાર ચેન્જ થાય છે, જ્યારે ગુજરાત અથવા તો ઇન્ડિયાની પોલિસી 34 years પછી ચેન્જ થઈ. So not just on education sector today, but country's economic and social progress in future will be affected by impact of this national education policy. So what are the highlights of this policy? So 10+2 system will be replaced by 5+3+3+4. It means that from age 3 to 8, when the child is small, from age 3 to 8, it will fall under the foundational stage. From 8 years to 11, it is preparational stage. 11 to 14, it will be middle stage, and 14 to 18, it will be secondary stage. That is how they have framed. Here they have tried to promote multilingualism, and native languages, means local languages, will be given more emphasis. So at least up to class 5, they have to be taught in home language wherever they are living. All kinds of arts, crafts will be offered to all level of students. School exams will be taken in class 3, 5 and 8 to track the progress of education. So exams will be reduced, and generally it is advised that the school should take exams in 3, 5 and 8 only, and government will monitor these exams. Board exams of class 10 and 12, they will be redesigned, and probably, as I said, as it is said, it is 5+3+3+4 kind of a thing. So from 14 to 18, at what time they will keep exam, they will also been decided. Here one good opportunity is that students will be given opportunity to improve the board exam. Let's say आपने 12वीं का एग्जाम दिया, आपके कम परसेंटेज आए, तो you will be given opportunity to give another exam for board to improvise your grade. अपने ज़माने में क्या होता था, यानी पहले के ज़माने में, कि एक बार 12वीं में कम मार्क आ गए तो फिनिश, you don't have any possibility to re-give the exam or reappear in the exam. आपको वो कम मार्क लेके पूरी जिंदगी जीना पड़ता था. नई पॉलिसी में ऐसा है कि यू कैन गिव once again give the exam to improve the grades. So that is a great part. Now I took this picture from Times of India explaining that how this early child education should be framed under the national education policy. So in formative years or early childhood years, what students should be taught? So students should know colors, shapes, alphabets, numbers. At the same time, they should also know the etiquettes, behavior, and emotional development, attachment to the parents, grandparents. A student should self-identify himself or herself. What is their identity as being a girl, as being a boy? What should be, how they should go ahead. Because previously, if you remember, in olden days, treatment given to boy and treatment given to girl was a different. But we expect that boy and girl should be treated equally so that their self-esteem remains same, and there should not be a discrimination based on their gender. So that self-identity mode should be concurrently presented. Similar way, relationship with nature. Okay, while you are learning, you should be there. You should thank nature. You should understand the importance of nature, and they should also understand that with no means they should be able to harm the nature. Arts, crafts, and music and ethics, all these things should be part of the study. Play-based or discovery-based learning should be there. It should not be only theoretical things, but they should learn through some experiments. Logical thinking and problem solving should always be part of that. And they should be taught in such a way that curiosity should come out of them, and they should try to collaborate, and they should try to work in team. So all these things should be inculcated in a child while child education is happening. At the same time, when they are going to university, so university education should have following things. It should have multiple pathways. Let's say someone enters into commerce and then suddenly he changes his mind and want to shift to science or arts. That should be allowed to shift that way. Similar way, if someone has dropped down and then after a few years he want to join back, there should be bring back of dropouts possible. Secondly, there has to be prior tutoring where senior student keep on tracking, teaching the junior students. Continuously learning outcomes should be checked, and schools are such a way built, or schools or colleges are built in such a way at university levels where multiple entry, multiple exits are available. So this is what we are expecting from new education policy. So new education policy proposes that there has to be no separate hard boundaries between the subjects. Right now we have a clear-cut boundary as arts, commerce and science. But this specific policy wants to dilute this boundary. We can't say that it is boundary will go, boundary will always remain, but they want to dilute this boundary. And across the boundaries, let's say if someone is learning science and he want to take 2-3 courses of commerce, he can take. It's not that you are getting a degree of Bachelor of Science and you are doing all the commerce courses. But yes, while doing Bachelor of Science, you may offer 2-3 courses of arts or 2-3 courses of commerce, depending on the allowed things from the university. As I told you, flexibility will be given to the students. Then B.Ed program, Bachelor of Education program will become of 4 years. Scholarship will be given. TET, Teachers Eligibility Test. TET test will be strengthened. Better materials will be given. And every teacher has to go through 50 hours of contributory personality development course. So the teachers' quality had to be improved for local, regional, national, state level and international workshops. Through these workshops, teachers' quality will be improved. National Education Policy 2020 proposes to do reduction in curriculum in a way that they want to reduce core essentials. So core essentials will be merged into smaller subjects. They want to improvise critical thinking. So critical thinking in inquiry, discovery, analysis, learning methods, holistic education, all these things will be improved. They want to make it interactive classroom rather than like one way delegation of the knowledge. Interactions through students will be improvised, and experimental learning will be given emphasis like fun, creative, collaborative, exploratory activities in classroom for experimental and learning will be improvised. It also proposes to give graded autonomy for the accreditation of the college. High performing universities are allowed to set up campuses outside India. So let's say IIT is there, and if IIT wants to set up the university in America, it is allowed. Similar way, other universities among the top 100 of the world, they are allowed to operate their branches in India. So now we are going to set up one regulatory body, and that regulatory body is known as Higher Education Commission of India, HECI. So HECI will be the highest body, and under that there will be many other bodies will be there. So National Policy of Education 2020 proposes a 4-year multidisciplinary bachelor degree in undergraduate program with multiple exit option. So it says that if you are completing 1 year, you will get certificate. If you are completing 2 year, you will get diploma. If you are completing 3 year, then you will get bachelor's degree. And if you are completing 4 years, then you will have a honorarium, or you will have a honors degree in that specific region. One good thing of this policy is they are removing the Master of Philosophy MPhil course. So MPhil course will be removed as per the Western models. So now there won't be any degree of MPhil. The highest body of education in new education policy will be Higher Education Council of India, HECI, Higher Education Council of India. Now in this HECI, the bodies of this HECI will be National Higher Education Regulatory Council, એટલે કે જે વસ્તુ રેગ્યુલેશન બનાવશે, રૂલ્સ બનાવશે, એને આપણે કહીશું નેશનલ હાયર એજ્યુકેશન રેગ્યુલેટરી કાઉન્સિલ, NHERC. They are going to frame the rules and regulation for India. In this, only medical and legal education is not part of it. Then second is National Accreditation Council. So they are going to do accreditation for the programs, engineering, commerce, arts, science. All this accreditation will be given by National Accreditation Council. Then comes the Higher Education Grant Council. The grant to the universities will be given by Higher Education Grant Council. This is a funding or financing institution. So this will replace the existing National Council of Teacher Education, All India Council of Technical Education and University Grant Commission. આ બધાને ભેગા કરીને શું બનાવ્યા લોકોએ? HEGC. The fourth body will be General Education Council, GEC. So they are going to frame the graduate attributes. Yeah, so
yes, sir. Voice was
interruption.
not audible.
Yeah, there was an interruption on internet, so I reconnected.
Okay, okay.
So I was telling about 4 councils are there. One is National Higher Education Regulatory Council, which is going to regulate the higher education. Second was National Accreditation Council, that is going to provide accreditation to all. Then came Higher Education Grant Council, that is going to give the grants. And the fourth one is General Council, in which various small councils like National Council for Teacher Education, then National Higher Education Qualification Framework, and all the professional bodies such as Veterinary Council, Architectural Council, Vocational Education Council, Agriculture Research Council, all these come under GECs. So it means that there is lot many bodies will be there under one umbrella, and entrance exams will be taken by a common body, that is National Testing Agency. So in addition to JEE and NEET, now National Testing Agency will take all kind of exams which are being taken at national level. કોકનું mic ચાલુ છે, બંધ કરજો. Someone's mic is on. So in this policy, major changes what we are expecting is, first is freedom of choice. So rigid system of art, commerce, science is going to be changed. It will become flexible. Vocational education and practical education will be given example, and one of the example is coding will start from standard 6. Programming જે છે છઠ્ઠા ધોરણથી આવી જશે. Internships will be allowed from the 6th grade. છઠ્ઠા ધોરણથી તમારે વેકેશનમાં internship લઈ શકો છો local trades and crafts ઉપર. Importance will be given to skill development and practical assignments. Then there'll be a system, something called as an assessment, and your grades will be transferred. So assessment will not be done only by a single teacher, but there'll be many teachers who will be doing assessment of a student. સ્ટુડન્ટે પોતાનું પણ અસેસમેન્ટ કરવાનું છે કે મેં આ વર્ષમાં કેવું પરફોર્મ કર્યું છે. એ જ સ્ટુડન્ટનું અસેસમેન્ટ આજુબાજુના વિદ્યાર્થીઓ પણ કરશે. સો સ્ટુડન્ટ હિમસેલ્ફ વિલ ઇવેલ્યુએટ હિમસેલ્ફ, other students will also evaluate student, and teacher will also evaluate the student. Then all the evaluation will enter into performance assessment review analysis of knowledge of holistic development (PARAKH). It is a national assessment center. So all your grades will go to National Assessment Center. Then there'll be a bank of credit. So academic bank of credit will be established, and all your credits will be digitally stored in that bank. So let's say you have done one course of MCA from Maninagar and another course of MCA from Rolwala and another course of MCA from foreign university. So all your courses grades will be fetched into that digital system, and then based on that your final degree can be awarded. It can be transferred also into your degree. એટલે મતલબ શું થયો કે તમારે 4 બેંકમાં ખાતું હોય તો 4 બેંકમાં પૈસા આમથી આમ ટ્રાન્સફર કરી શકો. એ રીતે તમે 4 અલગ અલગ જગ્યાએથી કોર્સ કર્યા હોય તો એ કોર્સને ભેગા કરીને એક ડિગ્રી પણ લઈ શકો છો. Preference is given to mother tongue as usual. Single entrance exam for all. Education Technology Forum will be established. Multidisciplinary college will be set up in every district. જેમ અત્યારે તમારું સંકુલ છે જેમાં MCA કોલેજ પણ છે, આર્ટ્સ પણ છે, સાયન્સ પણ છે. તો but again MCA college students cannot take course in science college, or science college cannot take course in MCA. So એ બધું restriction avoid થઈ જશે ને, એક જ કોલેજમાં બધી ડિસિપ્લિન આવી જાય એ પ્રકારનો પ્રયત્ન થશે. Music, arts, literature will be taught in colleges. MPhil બંધ થઈ જશે. Sanskrit will be brought to mainstream. Multiple entry, multiple exit. Foreign colleges can be set up over here. And expenditure જે છે GDP વધારવાનું છે. અત્યાર સુધી આપણે 3% કરતા હતા, હવે લગભગ 6% GDP નું એક્સપેન્શન કરવાનું છે. તો પ્રીવિયસ પોલિસી અને આ પોલિસીમાં શું ફરક છે? તો as I told you, previously we were spending 3.84% of GDP. Now we'll be spending 6%. So almost double money we'll be spending for the education system. Gross enrollment ratio. અત્યારે 26% લોકો જ ગ્રેજ્યુએશન કરે છે, 50% લોકોને ગ્રેજ્યુએશન સુધી લઈ જવાની ઈચ્છા છે. સિસ્ટમ 10+2+3 ને બદલે 5-3-3-4 કરવાની છે. બેચલર્સ પ્રોગ્રામ, we have 3 years bachelor, 2 years masters. In engineering, 4 years bachelor, 2 years master. In NEP, there can be a direct 5-year program where 3 years will give you bachelor and 5 years will give you master. આપણે આગળ ભણ્યા રીતે first year certificate, second year diploma, third year bachelor, fourth year honors and fifth year masters. Likewise અલગ અલગ ડિગ્રી તમને મળશે. હાયર એન્ટ્રન્સ એક્ઝામિનેશન જે છે અત્યારે ઇન્ડિયામાં અલગ અલગ છે, પણ નેક્સ્ટ ટાઈમ હવે શું થશે, નેશનલ ટેસ્ટિંગ એજન્સી વિલ ટેસ્ટ ઇટ. જસ્ટ લાઈક યુએસમાં કેવી સેટ છે એ રીતે અહીંયા પણ there will be a common exam. Medium of instruction is generally depending on school and state, but now up to class 5 it will be local language, and then onwards choice of the student. Vocational courses, it was generally done after schooling or after at the stage of college. In new education policy, 50% of the learners are exposed to vocational teaching during skill days only. Higher education ma subjects arts, અને હ્યુમેનિટીઝ ઓપ્શનલ હતા. હવે આર્ટ્સ હ્યુમેનિટીઝ જે છે એ કમ્પલસરી હોલિસ્ટિક અને મલ્ટીડિસિપ્લિનરી એન્વાયરમેન્ટ પ્રોવાઈડ કરવા માટે થશે. Previously, coding was there up to class 10. After class 10, coding was introduced. Here, coding will be introduced at class 6. બોર્ડ એક્ઝામ્સ જે છે એ ફિક્સ સબ્જેક્ટની ફિક્સ્ડ વખતે એક જ વાર લેવાય છે, જ્યારે નવી પોલિસીમાં મલ્ટિપલ સબ્જેક્ટ્સ ની એક્ઝામ્સ જ્યારે આપવી હોય ત્યારે વર્ષમાં 2-3 વાર લેવાઈ શકાશે અને તમે રિપીટ પણ કરી શકશો. Education approach, till now the theoretical education was given more emphasis. In new policy, they are also trying to give weightage to practical education. So all these presentations were made based on this literature. I have given you all the literature over here. So if any student want to refer something more, they can see these things over there. So that is it that I want to share with you. So now the class is open. We can have, you can put some questions in chat box. If I'm able to respond, I will respond to you. Yes, students.
Students, if you have any question, you can ask. You can write it in the box. Okay, sir. I think there are no questions as such. Students, is there any query?
No, sir.
Okay. So I thank Ketan sir for this wonderful session, and it was really informative, and it is really helpful for the students, and it gave us the insight about the new education policy. And thank you very much, sir, for spending with us your valuable time.
Thank
On
you.
behalf
Thank
of
you for
TMJ,
inviting
I am
me.
very much thankful to you.
Yeah.
So if there
Thank
are
you.
further questions, then I will forward it to you in future.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. And students, you can leave after 2 minutes, and you should go to your respective lab and theory sessions. Thank you all. Thank you so much, sir. Okay, students, you can leave.